Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today I've got a 10-point Invader G3 crossbow on the table. Please don't forget to check out our website. Go to our affiliates page. You'll find discount codes for things like Mantis Axe and Core belts. You'll find a link that you can sign up for Big Daddy Unlimited. They actually have things in stock and usually at a lower price than other places. Link to that cool little bore light that we use for lighting up the barrels. Use those links. It will often save you money, never will cost you any additional money, and helps the channel. Thank you. This particular one is 2 model years old, but it's still very viable. It's still a very powerful crossbow. The current generation of this is the Invader 400, and the G4 preceded it. But this G3 is not very far behind them. You might be able to find it as new old stock, or you might be able to buy it used. And it is quite a good crossbow. So today let's go ahead and talk about its features and some of its characteristics. So the first thing I'm going to start with is that as you see it sitting here, other than this unloading bolt that I have, it's the way it comes. So it comes with 3 of these 400 grain carbon fiber bolts. And one thing, the term bolt arrow, typically if it was for a crossbow it was a bolt. If it were for any other type of bow then it was an arrow. But when they're getting to be a little bit longer than 16 inches, you start to hear the term arrow applied to them, even though for a crossbow. Being these are 20 inches, you may see them referred to as an arrow. I tend to use bolt when it's a crossbow and arrow when it's any other type of bow, to be clear, because they're not interchangeable. You can't use a regular bow arrow with a crossbow regardless of what you call it. This thing here is an unloading bolt, and it's very important that once you cock a crossbow, you have to fire it with a load on it, whether it's a bolt or an arrow, or whether it's one of these unloading bolts. If you dry fire a crossbow, just like pretty much any bow, it can do instantaneous, irreversible damage, and it can actually, parts can fly off depending on the nature of it, and cause injury. So these are a one-shot. So you would load this just like any other bolt, and using it is going to destroy it. So you just shoot it into the ground, and it is biodegradable. So it's not like you're littering. It will just degrade and become fertilizer. So these are very important. If you buy a crossbow, make sure you have these. Now the bolts themselves, or arrows, it is important that you have the appropriate weight. So this one is set up for a 400 grain arrow, and it's important to stay very close to that. If you go much higher or lower, the load on the string won't be correct, and you could actually result in some damage. The features that this thing has, first off, when we look at the arms, the spread of the arms when it's in the uncocked position like this is 22.6 inches. And when it's cocked, it goes down to 19 inches. And because this is a standard forward crossbow, it's all at the front of it, and it's wide when you store it. This hoop up here is to put your foot in for cocking, and there's 2 features for cocking. There's the hoop that you're going to use no matter what mechanism you use. At the back of it, there are these handles. This is the AccuDraw 52. And with this system, you use these handles, and I'm going to cut into a little cut showing how to cock it by hand, as well as cock it using this system. And cocking by hand can be a little difficult depending on your strength, but pretty much anybody should be able to cock it with this. So I'm going to stop here, cut into that, show you by hand and with this system, and then come back. Cocking this by hand is easy to do if you're strong enough. It's a 165-pound pole. Of course, the faster the crossbow, this one is 330 feet per second. Generally, the heavier the string pull is. But to do it, all you're going to do is set it onto fire. Then you're going to put your foot in the hoop and grab the string down as tight as possible to the rail. And you'll want to try to be centered, and I'm just using my body to keep the crossbow upright. And as I pull up on it, I'm going to pull it under the bolt retainer and pull it up till it clicks into the safe position, and then it is ready to go. Cocking this with the AccuDraw 52, which is the cocking assist that comes with it, it's fairly easy. Get 2 handles, each with a hook, and these are what's going to hook to the string. You can pull them down in any order, and they do self-retract. You hook the hook on the string, do that for both of them. Before you start really pulling on them, make sure that both of them are hooked and that it's close to the rail so that it's as centered as possible. And then you pull up as evenly as you can, and as you pull up, it is possible for it to go above the bolt retainer. If it does, just let it down, pull them out a little bit, and then pull back up again, and it will click on safe when you're actually successful, and then it self-retracts and puts itself away. I tend to like to do it by hand. I seem to get a little bit better setup with it doing it by hand. It's a little bit faster. I'm not messing around with pulling these things out and hooking them to the string. But if that's not within something that you can do, this thing actually works quite well. There's another variant of this that is designed with a ratchet, so there's a crank and you crank it. The disadvantage to that is it's noisy. The advantage to that is it only takes about 5 pounds of strength to do that. This thing is 6.6 pounds weight, and a lot of that weight's up front. So typical of any crossbow, they're a little bit forward heavy unless you get the reverse arm design where it brings more of that weight back. Kind of the bullpup equivalent in a firearm, the bullpup equivalent of a crossbow. But this one's a conventional, and it actually works quite smoothly. One of the things that you'll see here as we pan across, right here, these bumpers are an optional add-on, and they're a noise dampener. This makes a significant difference in the quietness of the crossbow, and it also does prevent the string from bouncing at the end. It hits this rubber, it's kind of a very soft rubber. It hits this rubber and arrests the string. Keeps it from kind of wiggling around, and it makes it much quieter. It does have a nice deck on the rail, and it's got this kind of a camo pattern. It's a comfortable to hold crossbow. On the bottom side of it, there's a place to grab. You can grab this way, you can grab this way, you can grab back here. It's one thing that's very important. Never put any part of your body up over this lip. Any part of you that's holding onto the crossbow needs to be below this lip. The string, when it's here in the uncocked position, is back here, all the way back here in the cocked position, kind of comes right up under to about here, and it goes forward and travels at very high velocity down this entire length. So if you got something up here, it's possible you might lose that something. So this shelf here is important. Not only does it give you something you can push up against to hold and get your grip right, but it protects you from the string. And you'll even see when I load the bolt, I never put my hand, and this is in a cocked position and I'm loading a bolt, I keep my fingers up here. So that even if it were to malfunction and drop the string while I'm loading it, I'm not going to get bit. It does come with this scope, and it's a low magnification scope. With the covers on it, they're kind of a yellowish color, and they're really kind of meant for sunlight. They do kind of obscure the view a little bit. If you're in bright light, they may help. Otherwise, I tend to take them off. And it's got a reticle on it, which I don't know if I'll be able to show you. Now, I'm not going to be able to show you. I'll have to put in a picture of it and show you what that reticle looks like, and in a little insert. And it does have adjustable turrets, so you can adjust height and windage. The other thing that it has, it's up at the other end, if I turn it around, is this quiver. And this quiver comes with it, and it's a quick detach. There's a little lever here. I can flick this little lever, if I find it, right here, and I can remove this quiver fairly easily if it's in my way. And then I can put it back in just as easily, bring the lever around, lock it in place, and I've got a quiver. So if I want to replace it with a different quiver, or if I want to store the quiver separately, or I want to have multiple quivers with different bolts with different heads for different purposes, I can set it up that way. And this one is designed to hold the 3 that it comes with, and then you can have additional in something else if you want. Overall, it's a nice crossbow. It's a high-speed crossbow. It's designed for hunting. This is perfectly suited for boar and many other deer, anything like that. I might hesitate to go after a bear with this, but pretty much anything under a bear, this is going to see to pretty easily. The distance in the shooting that we're doing here is at about 20 yards. After fixing the camera, which decided to slide down in the middle of the shooting, it's important to note that we were shooting at a raised elevated position downward towards the ground with the backstop of a fence, and behind it a open canal and trees. There was no houses or anything else in the area. If you're going to choose to shoot this in a backyard scenario, it's really important that you make sure that anything that fires from this stays on your property and anything in the backstop is safe. It's not a firearm, so it doesn't travel thousands of yards, but it's still a fairly dangerous projectile. Overall, crossbows are becoming a very popular way to hunt. They're more compact than a standard bow. They're much easier to stay in a ready position. Once you cock this, you can have a bolt in it for hours at a time and be ready for something. And then when you're done, of course you do have to do something like this to decock it, unlike a regular bow where you can let off. but it's not practical with a regular bow to stay hours in that ready position. Now, I did mention earlier on the bolts, they're 400 grain. They'll fire at 330 feet per second with this one. It's a 165 pound string pull, drops down to around 80 when you use the cock assist, and you get about 97 foot-pounds of energy at the end. And you can swap the head out. I've got a field tip on it right now, which is for practice, but you can put various different types of tips on here, bladed tips and things like that. At that point, the arrow is going to be a little heavier, so you're going to lose a little velocity, but you are still going to be able to use this for hunting. So it's not just set up this way. It's just you don't want to fire those types of tips into a practice target, just a point like this. And just a few notes for people that may not be familiar with crossbow operation, or if you're wanting to get a crossbow. These cams are part of the process of multiplying the energy, allowing more energy than you would get in the distance that this travels. And these arms, as you cock it, these arms will pull in towards the body. So that's where it'll go, towards that 19-inch. And then when it fires, they pop back out. And they don't travel all that far. The distance it travels is only about 3 inches, but the cams and the multiple coils of the string multiplies that so that you get the full travel from this position all the way back here to where it holds the bolt, the string, in preparation for firing. And this mechanism holds the bolt down, and here's your safety. Now the safety lever itself is on the other side, and you can switch it between safe and fire. And one thing that's kind of important when you're cocking it, and I do mention this as I'm cocking it, needs to be in the fire position, and when you pull it back sufficiently, it will lock into the safe position automatically. And it actually has quite a nice trigger. It has a rifle style trigger. It's a curved trigger. I can't demonstrate it because that would be dry firing it, and the only way to get it into a fire position is to lock it. But it's actually quite light, right? It's actually quite crisp and relatively short travel. There's the entire travel. When you're actually firing it, you get about a little take up to about there and then back to about here, and it fires. So it's actually quite a nice trigger, and I found that it was the hardest part about staying on target is you got that weight out at the front, so it kind of wants to orbit, and just like a rifle would. So managing your orbit is really the harder part than managing the trigger, and it does indicate the type of knock that it needs for the arrows. That's the end part. It's important that you use the matching knock style for this particular crossbow to work correctly. One thing I'll also note, under here is a Picatinny rail. So if you don't like the scope, or you want to put an optic on it of some sort, a red dot, or any other type of thing, you simply remove the scope and its mounts, and you've got a regular Picatinny rail available. So whether you're hog hunting, deer hunting, just target shooting, whether you got a little bit of a zombie infestation you want to quietly deal with, this or the latest generation will do quite a good job. The latest generation is between 380 and 400 foot-pounds, or I'm sorry, feet per second, which gets you between 132 and 140 foot-pounds. And the current MSRP on the latest version of this is around 700, 600 to 700, depending on where you look. So it's not an expensive crossbow. It's not really inexpensive, but for a high-speed, powerful crossbow, it's actually a lower cost than a lot of them in that territory. These things can go up into the thousands. For between $600 and $700, you're going to get a lot of crossbow in a nice, compact little package. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell up there to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, and everywhere. And thank you.